familiar with the Himalayan states. The 11 Himalayan states are shown here. I have not included the district of Darjeeling. This map, however, is far more important. It shows the four geophysical longitudinal regions that are separated by the major faults in the area. The Himalayan frontal fault in the south, the next one is the main boundary thrust, then the main central thrust separating the purple and the red region, and finally the Trans-Himalayan fault and the Indo-Tibet Suture zone. If we look at the precipitation pattern in the Himalayan region, we find that it decreases as we go from the east to the west and as we go from the south to the north of the Himalayan region. You will see here that except for Jammu and Kashmir, all the Himalayan states have slightly higher rainfall than the national average, with the eastern states having more than double that average. This leads to very high per capita availability of water. Unfortunately, how much of this available water is utilizable is not known. That research has yet to be done. What I have done is I have taken a national average figure where about 25% of the total precipitation is considered to be utilizable, and I presented that data. Arunachal is not shown here because its water availability is just huge, and you will see that at the bottom there is a red line, which is the Falkenmark index at 1700 cubic meters per person per year. This is supposed to be the minimum comfort zone for most societies in the world today. If you are below 1700 cubic meters per person per year, then you are likely to face water stresses. Out of sheer curiosity, I thought that since in the mountain regions it may not be possible to actually utilize 25% of the precipitation. So I assume, let us see what happens if we are able to utilize only 10% of the precipitation. And then I did some numerical jugglery. I said, let me assume that the per capita domestic supply is not 40 liters per person per day, but it should be 100 liters per capita day. I also assume that every single bit of our agricultural land should be irrigated, and if irrigation systems are to be developed to supply a minimum of 20 centimeters every year. Third assumption was water for industry, water for commerce, water for urban uses, and this is what I came up with, that the government would have to arrange to supply these figures of the utilizable water. And I'm only assuming 10% of the precipitation as being utilizable. And when I look at this, what I see is that the states like Assam, Manipur is a surprise in this, Tripura, Uttarakhand are definitely in trouble because it's not easy for government systems to supply so much water. And maybe Himachal will also be in trouble. Now, these kinds of macro numbers hide the reality, which is that we have scarcity areas in the midst of plenty. The major problems arise, as I said, the actual utilizable amount may be only about 10 or 15%, and that explains why there are such scarcities as we see in places like Assam, in Tripura, in Himachal, and in Uttarakhand in particular. But there are localized water problems, particularly in rain shadow and deforested areas in almost every Himalayan state. Cherrapunji. When we produced the first citizens report on the state of India's environment, our researcher who returned from Cherrapunji came and said, "Did you know that they have water shortages in Cherrapunji?" Now, when we were writing the press releases for it, I wanted to put this out as the main heading. Cherrapunji faces water shortages. This is 82. And a lot of people at CSC said, यार फिर एक बार सोच लो, ऐसी बात कर रहे हो, पता नहीं our researchers may have made a mistake, but over the years I found out that she was very right. Then springs are drying up all across the Himalayan states. There are places like the South Sikkim district, which is known as a drought-prone area, and those of us who come from Uttarakhand know the problems of the Kosi Valley. These are just some examples. And the figure on the right, you can see that between the Shivalik hills and the higher Himalayas are the lesser Himalayas, where most of our population lives. That's the middle Himalayas also. And you can see that the rainfall, which is in the lower graph, is between 30 to 40 inches a year, almost putting this area into a semi-arid region. Now, one of India's ancient rishis, Rishi Kashyap, had identified 5 principles of water management. And one of the principles was that forest and water have a symbiotic interdependence. In a fantastic study done by Bartaria and Waldia, they showed that the forest cover in the Gala River watershed declined from 70% to 57% in about a 33-year period, 52 to 85. In the same period, rainfall also decreased by almost 1% every year. And the spring discharges declined anywhere from 25 to 100%, which means that many of the springs went dry. So forests and springs have very strong interdependence. The decreasing forest cover, particularly that of the broad-leaved oak forest, has led to less and less recharge for the local streams and rivers. The small graph, I don't know if you can make out over there, but the small graph at the bottom shows that the Kosi River had about 995 liters per second flow in 1994. This is during the low flow season, okay, just in the summer. But by 2004, 10 years later, the low flow average has been decreasing steadily, and it comes down to between 100 and 200 liters per second in 10 years. This obviously has an impact on the rural water supply systems. In Uttarakhand, the Uttarakhand Jal Sansthan reported that in 2005-06, about 40% of the sources that they had surveyed, they had seen a decrease in the discharge of 50% or more. And there were many of these sources were also feeding the traditional water harvesting systems, which had dried up. Now, a consequence of this is that a majority, and this is the surprising part, that a majority of the rural population does not actually receive 40 liters every day. Much of their needs, especially during the dry season, is met by traditional water harvesting systems, about 1/3 to 40% of the annual household demand. As on 1st April 2009, and you can see that states like Assam, J&K, Nagaland, Tripura are up above 33%. The same problem more or less afflicts urban water supply systems. In many of our urban areas, the old towns like Shimla or Nainital or Shillong, the water supply networks are aging, they've got leakages, they are not reaching out to all the different areas, and therefore they are inadequate. And on top of that, urban expansion has disrupted the catchments of natural sources of water in these towns. The picture that I have shown you shows the extremely dense, in fact, when we were coming up to Gangtok yesterday, Gangtok looks just about the same. I mean, houses built everywhere. This is a picture of Aizawl. And as many of you know, Aizawl had a very serious water problem about 15 years ago, but then they switched to rooftop rainwater harvesting, and I'm told that today almost every building in Aizawl has a roof rainwater harvesting tank. Now, when in urban areas in particular, when there is huge expansion of the population, demand for water, water is supplied, then it leads to pollution. And along with the urban areas, as industry is moving, particularly the mining industry is creating a lot of havoc in some of the states. The picture at the lower right is that of the Ganga, and you can imagine that if the Ganga is not spared from pollution, then almost no other river or water body will be spared from pollution. When we look at irrigation, mountain irrigation systems are primarily minor irrigation systems. And traditionally, the local communities have evolved very ingenious techniques of irrigation in their areas. And these were possible because of the autonomy over these natural resources. Each state seems to have several different types of irrigation systems, and by systems I don't mean just the structure but also the management system. And these systems work for hundreds of years until the coming of the British or after independence. Today what we see is that the agricultural sector in the mountain states has received very little attention, and much of the irrigation infrastructure that was created by the communities has been allowed to decay. On top of that, the separation of the forest, water and land departments has undermined agricultural productivities in our region. This is the saddest part, that agriculturists in our country simply see agricultural production, they do not see farming systems, which are a combination of land, water and forests, and also pastures. The resulting shift to non-farm employment has reduced the sustainability of the traditional systems. This is mainly because traditional systems require a fair amount of investment of human effort, and as people move out of farming into other occupations, they don't have the time to invest in this. As a response, state intervention has increased, and there is no doubt that in some places state intervention has done very well, and in other places it hasn't worked so well.